Here's the headline. Francis Ngannou signs with PFL 6 weeks ago. Has there been a change? That's the headline. How would you work backwards from that statement? And it is a little bit difficult because Francis's impact directly, it's hard to know where we're going with that, right? We didn't get the information that we wanted, but we did get the information. I mean, we did get the who, what, when, why, and where. We did. We just didn't like the answer because it starts in 2024, which may or may not be predicated with a boxing match prior, right? Like, we did get the 5 W's. We just didn't necessarily love it. And so I am inclined to say, with the 6 weeks that have gone by and you look at the splash, I think you would be misled, though. Misled. The PFL has done so many interesting things. I mean, they are moving in a very rapid and fast direction. That the Francis announcement, as big as that was, well, then they had another one that was really big. They were trying to buy Bellator. Then they had another one that was really big, which is Jon Jones showed up, went down on the floor and got nose to nose with Ngannou. Then they have a fight, and it turned out they were two buddies, and they didn't give their best effort. And there was a clause within the contract that says, regardless of opponent, you will bring your best effort. They threw them both out. Got Burgos and Collard to look forward now to. I mean, not for nothing. I think that you'd be a little bit misguided if you were negative to the fact that Francis signed 6 weeks ago and what's different. I feel like there is something different. I feel like it was impactful, but I feel as though they just keep making the right moves. The PFL, it just keeps making the right moves. PFL and Bellator is very interesting. I had this conversation with Ariel. But I reminisce, right? I did Ariel's show on Monday, and the way that works, guys, is when you get done, you then think, oh, I could have said this, and this would have been clearer. This would have been funnier. This would have been more impactful. You just play it through your head, right? You got this narcissist inside of you, and people are watching. You want to go do a good job, but I will share you. As I reflect back on that, Ariel asked me, what do I think? Do I want it to happen? Now, here's what I don't want to happen, but this is just because I'm a crusty guy that goes back in the sport to his junior year in high school in 1993 in Mobile, Alabama. Like, I've just been, so when there's things that keep repeating themselves, there's certain things that get annoying. When I hear announcers, or even you fans, talking about some guy and how good his footwork is, but you've never, ever, ever explained what that means. Or I'll hear people, including you, talk about this guy's a good athlete, but define it. Like, there's certain things that just annoy me. And one of them is, the more places we have, the more competition, and that's better for the fighters. I've got to hear that. I hear people say that, and they're proud. They're proud when those words come out. You're one step away when you say that. You're one step away from telling the market the powers of supply and demand. I mean, I just tell you that because if you want to do this business course-wise, you're in the 100 level. You're 18 years old, you're off at a junior college. That'll be the first course you take when the university doesn't even respect your knowledge and mind yet. I mean, it's a very simplistic approach. And it's a waste of time to hear about it. Now, when you start to get into the 400 level classes, you start to get into a lot more interesting level sophistication of business. And if you look at the PFL buying Bellator, and this is all an experiment, right? That's why business it's so risky. Because nobody knows for sure, but I'll just share with you, if the PFL bought Bellator, if that's the discussion we're taking, I'm confident, and so are you guys, that the PFL brand continues and Bellator does not. The athletes and the personnel and the ideas, I get all of that. I get what's being absorbed. I just share for you, just for thought, to get out of the 100 levels, gets up to the 400 levels, and let's talk about something that hasn't been done before, which is if the PFL takes control of Bellator, Bellator continues as Bellator. What, from a financial standpoint, do you think changes? I'm just asking. Is the PFL going to do more shows? Are they going to match those Bellator dates? Or are they going to literally buy it and the first thing they do is cannibalize it and they're going to have less dates? I mean, just asking from a monetary standpoint, whether you're selling hard tickets, you're selling distribution, you're selling rights, you're selling merchandise, you're selling advertisements. If the first thing that you do is go into a business and then cannibalize it, I haven't heard of that. So what would be the harm if they did absorb it, they took control, they creative control, could start to make a few changes, maybe do a little cross promote, you do something along these lines, but you still kept the brand Bellator, which the MMA community knows very, very well. I would assume on its longevity alone, more than the MMA community knows PFL. What would be wrong with that? And there's never been a CEO that does that. Believe me, if PepsiCo could purchase Coca-Cola, they would stop making Coca-Cola. And you'd have to sit back and go, okay, but let me get a calculator out. Why? Well, we're number one now. We own. No longer we have to compete with them. No, that's right. You don't have to compete with them. You now own them. Why are you shutting them down? Why would you shut down a brand? Why would you shut down something that's known? Why would you take divisions? Why would you commingle? Like, why would you do these kinds of things? There's answers, by the way. I know those answers. I can play you both sides of this, but I just share for you when I think about that absorption or when I think about all the moves the PFL made, that one does stand out for me. I think that it's very meaningful. Like, there's zero chance, whether that happens or not, and that is the most likely, but there's zero chance, and we can all agree on this, that PFL buys Bellator, stops PFL, and keeps it Bellator. Like, there's just no chance that that would happen. But if you get a calculator out, and you go from any level of metric, go from viewership, you could go to what's known as engagements online, be a very helpful number. You could go to your live gate, the size of the arena, what your attendance are. It'd be very interesting to hear you say, even if you raise the money and you're writing the check, be very interesting for you to explain why that one is getting shut down. I'm just bringing that to you. There is nobody that has ever, and I'm very confident in our lifetimes will ever outdo what Vince McMahon did. I don't believe that's going to happen. Vince McMahon took a product that he tried to dupe the world. They kept their mouth shut. They protected their business. They went from town to town like carnies. The carny example, by the way, it sounds to people like a derogatory. It's not meant to be. Think of a carnival. You guys go to this. Think of like a carnival, the 4th of July carnivals are all over the place. But think of a carnival and think about the games that you go to, and they got the great big stuffed animal bear, and none of the games work. I'm shooting the basket 5 times. Before I put my money down, I sink every one of them. Now I can't get one in. Do you guys know why? Do you know the basketball game trick? There's just a board they put behind it. It's as simple as that. So you got the basketball hoops up there. You're shooting them to get the great big bear. The guy that works there shows you, hey, look, hey, this is a piece of cake. He takes one hand. He hits the backboard. It goes right in. He sinks 2-3 shots. You go, yeah, I'm a college basketball player. Here's my $10. And every ball you hit the backboard and it goes bouncing off. Well, the guy has a guy. And there's a board. There's this board that comes up to the hoops that you can't see behind. So when it's his turn to shoot, the guy drops the release. It's not there. It's a normal backboard. When it's your turn, he throws this up, makes it bounce off. I'm not trying to ruin that game for you. They all have a catch. So the only way that this works, the only way you can bring money and have an attraction and have a business, the only way you can do it is if the people that have been revealed the secrets protect the business. And Vince firmly believed this, and then he took a stand in 1989 under oath And the person asked him flat out, is this the competition or is this pre-rehearsed? And people like to use the word fake. Fake wasn't the right word. Resistance was the right word. Is your opponent resisting you, yes or no? And I only bring that to you because he believed it would sink the business. He was under oath. He had to answer the question. He answered it and thought he was going to walk out of that courtroom. Poor man. But he found a way. And he found a way to pivot. And now he hides in plain sight. No longer calls it the WWF, calls it entertainment. No longer will say I'm in the wrestling business, he'll say I'm in the entertainment business. Will no longer call the wrestlers athletes, he'll call them superstars. He hides in plain sight and sells out arenas. WrestleMania's 2 days. It's shocking the numbers that they do. It's shocking the emotion that they can garner. I just share for you that I don't know that anyone will come along that will ever see that's in front of Vince. And I don't think anyone of you are going to argue with me. If you try to get down to dollars and cents and checkbooks, you definitely aren't going to win that one, right? It's rumored, I don't believe this rumor, it's rumored that Vince, who bought WCW, it's rumored that he bought it before you guys know. When Vince bought it and absorbed it and shut it down, that is what the world is told is when he purchased it, that is what he did. That he bought it, he absorbed it, and he shut it down. That's what the world believes he did. But there is a rumor, with very good reason, to believe that Vince had taken an ownership share in that company years before. But he didn't shut it down. He didn't bring the athletes over, and he didn't start doing co-promotes and commingling and trying to get one name out there. He kept them both, and he had competition. He had the Monday Night Wars. At a very minimum, Vince sent in operatives, for sure. Vince had people that were loyalists that were on the other side, but I don't want to go down that road with you completely and getting it back and forth. I don't want you lost on it. I want to just bring up, if we acknowledge that Vince has done it better than anybody here, let me give you guys another great example. Have you heard of something called Apple? I'm sure you have. Apple, when I was growing up, was a laughingstock. We hated apples. The poor schools are who had to have Apple. When the fancier, well-funded schools got done with their computers, instead of taking them to the dump, they would take them to poor schools. And those were the Apples. And then the kids on the other side of the tracks, where I grew up, we had Microsoft. Microsoft was king. Not even close. And Apple was on its way out of business. Apple was just about to get closed up. This is prior to Steve Jobs and a lot of the great stories that you guys have heard. But somebody infused it with $8 million, about $8 million of stock in one day. That might not impress you now. That would be, I'm talking about 1987. I was talking about, roughly in that time. Talking about an equivalent of close to $100 million. Somebody put in it, saved the company, and changed the company. That somebody was Bill Gates, the owner of Microsoft. Bill Gates put the money in that Apple needed to stay alive. And you know why he did it? Because he knew competition was good. He knew it was good for him. He knew he'd perform better. He knew his staff would perform better. He knew his staff would take their eye off the ball and their foot off the gas, and they didn't have to continue to fight these guys. It's a very interesting concept. I just share for you the idea of getting it and then shut it down. How are you going to explain that? I'd like to hear. By the way, please don't think you have to answer. I know the answer to that. I'm sharing with you on the other side. And if you are going to do away with dates, and you are going to do away with venues, and you are going to do with the distribution of some of these contracts and merchandise, if you're going to do away with those things, then you're attempting to tell a bank that you're going to buy a business, and your grand plan is to make it smaller. There's not a bank out there that's going to loan on it. Not that I've ever heard of. So you keep them all, you keep the dates, you try to do, okay, that's great. How do you choose which brand you go with, right? I mean, it's one of these things. If you're the CEO of Pepsi and you buy Coke, you don't have to shut down Coke. That can be the one that flourishes. It's an interesting concept. And when somebody buys a business, again, for your 100 level guys, and I'm not trying to condescend, but there's some things that are very annoying to me. And if you're out of your lane, please don't. When you buy a business, for the 100 level guys, they're going to think they're purchasing an idea They can get to the marketplace that provides either a good or a service and make sure its profits that exceeded expenditures. That's what they think they're doing, and they'll say that, and they'll feel proud about it, like they were a smart guy. When somebody buys a business, what they're buying is contracts. That's it. Now, that is going to be contracts for personnel. Your marketing department will have a value that the bank will equate into the loan. Your PR team, who your CEO is, who your board of directors is, the way you've got it structured, who you've got under contract, who you can have for a meaningful period of time. Now, that extends, of course, that goes to the fighters and so on and so forth. I know people that have studied MMA, and they believe that Dana White paid $70 million for Pride to get the athletes. There's athletes that have come over and said, I'm one of the reasons that Dana bought it. Huh? Dana gave $70 million away to get your absorbent contract that he's going to. Why? Were we not selling out? Were we not having numbers? We're not having sponsorships? We needed you? I mean, I'm just asking. We needed you. What are you talking about? That's not what happened. But for you to understand what did happen, you got to look into it a little bit deeper. And I think as far as the concept of the PFL and Bellator goes, I think it's a very fascinating one, and nobody's hidden from this. The PFL is not denying this. Bellator is not denying this. Generally, these things get real quiet, like that's part of the game. And that's not what's happening. It's out here for us to see. And I think that perhaps a little bit of a stretch by me, but I think perhaps that's because it lends to the idea you're not going to absorb to shut one down. You could have two flourishing events. You got a little bit of ability now to co-promote with the talent should you want to. You got incredible teams and incredible personnel. You got offices in all the right locations. It just doesn't seem when you're in the business of buying contracts, like if the first thing you're going to do is go tear up a whole bunch of those contracts, that's not my guess. Been liking a lot of really impressive moves lately, and my guess is, should this play out, this is going to be another one of them.